Hi and welcome to challenge check substring. In this challenge, our task is to check if one string is a substring of another string. So what do I mean by that? For example, if we have an input like programming languages, we are going to have some sort of a pattern as well. So our test pattern or our pattern could be program or it could be language. Now, we can see that program exists within this programming language. That means program is a substring of this programming languages, and therefore the output is true. So the input is here, it's a string. Our pattern is going to be a string, but the output is going to be a Boolean value. And if we check that against language, that is going to return true as well, because language is a part of the string. That's why it's called a substring. All right, now that we have gone over the challenge, let's jump into JavaScript and let's start solving this. So this is going to be rather easy because in JavaScript, we do have a method that is going to check the substring of a string. So if I were to create a function, I'm going to call it is substring. And in here, what we do is we passed our input text. I could call it input text. And we also pass in our test pattern right here. And then this is going to generate a Boolean value for us. I'm going to select my input text, and on there I have access to a method that is called includes. And if I pass in my test pattern, this is going to generate a Boolean value for me, and I'm just going to return it from the function. Now, there are going to be a few test cases that we are going to test this. So I'm going to say is substring. For our test string, I'm going to pass in programming languages. Program, there we go. Let's save this. Let's run it as well. Node a tab hyphen. Oh, we're not in the directory, so I need to do cd 007 tab, and there we go. Now we are there. So here I'm going to say node a tab. There we go. So we run this and we get an error. Input test dot includes. Oh, I mistyped this. Includes. There we go. Now it should run fine. There we go. So we can see it returns true because that's what this generates. It basically generates a Boolean value. If this is a part of our input string, if this program is a part of the programming languages, then that's going to be true. Let's test it for another case. Let's pass in language. Let's run this again. So here you can see in both scenarios, this is going to be true. I'm going to go on with another scenario. So in here, I'm just going to say double S and save this. Let's run this. And then we get a false because we don't have two S's next to each other. Let's check it for another case. I'm going to pass in RAM, RAM, and now you can see we do have RAM, but this RAM that I've passed in, this is uppercase. But this RAM here, this is lowercase. Let's see how this program is going to behave. What do you think how this is going to behave? Let's run it. We get a false because we didn't check uppercase or lowercase characters. So here, what I can do is I can just comment this one out and I can come up with a simple check for that one as well. So I can grab my input text. I'm going to say to lowercase. This is going to lowercase the input text. And on here, we're going to do our includes method. And I'm going to pass in my test pattern. And I'm going to lowercase that as well, to lowercase. Let's save everything. Let's run this again. And now we get it true. Now, what if we pass in an empty input string, but there is going to be something inside of our output string? Doesn't matter what that is. I could just say ABC. What happens here? Now, because our input string is empty, it doesn't matter what we look inside of it. This is going to generate false for us. And there we go. We get a false. Now, what if we do have something in our input string, but we do not have anything in the pattern? What happens here? Well, in here, what is it that we are actually looking at? We are saying if an empty string is a substring of a string. Well, it is a substring of that. So this should return true for us. And there we go. And this is going to be the pattern. So this is going to be the solution for JavaScript. For TypeScript, I want to go through a different way. I want to implement this manually. Now, don't get me wrong. We could use almost the same thing in TypeScript as well. In all of the languages, we do have some sort of a method that is going to check a substring against a string. And if it exists, it's going to generate a Boolean value. But I want to show you what happens behind the scenes. And if you have been following the videos, you know that this is where I actually peel away how these methods work underneath. Let's create our function. This is going to be function is substring. Now, what is, let me just type it correctly, substring. What is this going to accept? It is going to accept an input text, which is going to be of type string. It will also accept a test pattern, which is going to be of type string, but this function is going to generate a Boolean value for us. Now, I'm going to, as I said, I want to peel away how these methods actually work. So there are going to be two if statements that I'm going to implement right here. The first one is that if our test pattern is an empty string, what do we want to do? We could say, okay, I could return true or I could return false. Now, if our test pattern is empty in JavaScript version, what was the result? The result was true. So I'm just going to pass in here true. After this, I'm going to implement another test string, and this is going to be something that we did not actually check for JavaScript. What if the pattern that we pass is larger in characters than our input string? Well, in that scenario, we should return false because we have no idea of if that's not going to be a substring of our input string. So if our input text dot length is lower or smaller than our test pattern dot length, what do? We just return false. Very good. So now that these two checks are done, I am going to create two variables, const text. The first one is going to be text. I'm going to grab my input text and I'm going to lowercase this to lowercase. Just lowercase is enough. And I'm going to grab my pattern and I'm going to lowercase that as well. Test pattern. There we go. Now that we have lowercased our text and our pattern, we're just going to try to refer them as text and pattern, not input text and test pattern. So what do we do here? Well, we need some sort of a loop, right? To iterate over the characters of our text and match it against the characters of the pattern. So we have two texts that we want to iterate over, so we need two kinds of loops. But how do we nest them? Well, we need to think about and decide which text is going to be, which string is going to be larger, which is going to be the string and which is going to be the substring. So the one that is going to be the string, that's going to be the outer loop, and the one that is a substring, that's going to be the inner loop. So the outer loop, I could use like some fancy loop methods, but I'm just going to use a for loop. And we want this loop to have a variable, and I'm going to call it I. The initial value for I is 0. What is I? I, as I'd like to call it, is a loop agent. It is going to iterate over our text. And in each iteration, it takes one character of that text and it matches that against our pattern. Now, the question here is, how many times do I want this to be iterated? How many times do I want I to iterate? Well, I need to have I iterate for as many times as possible. Now, why am I saying that? The reason that I'm saying that is for this. So let me just create this. Now here, let's say our text has 10 characters. And let's say the pattern, now for now, it doesn't matter what the text is. It doesn't matter what the pattern is. It's just what matters is for the loop, what matters is how many characters are there. And when it determines that, it is going to iterate over those, it's going to iterate those many times over that specific string. Let's say we have 3 characters inside of our pattern. Now, the maximum number of times that this I is going to iterate for us, that's very important for us to determine here. So when I starts from 0, you need to understand how indices work. So if I have 10 characters, the smallest index is going to be 0, the largest index is going to be 9. So let's talk about individual indices. Now, when I'm starting at the 0 index, I can match it against my pattern because I am at the first index, I still have 10 characters. So how many characters are left? 10. But if I go to 1, now there is just 9 characters left. So with this in mind, I can just move forward and just keep counting how many characters I have left. This is for our text, all right? Now, the reason that I'm counting at which index, how many characters have I already checked is because I have 3 characters in my pattern. Now, why is that important? Because once I go to the, let's say the 8th index, how many characters do I have? I have 2 characters. Now, here is where the number of characters that I have in my text is less than my pattern. So this is not going to work for me. The pattern has become the substring. Sorry, the pattern has become the string and the text has become the substring. So this is how I'm going to go about this. We need to check for a maximum number of characters that we can fit the substring inside of our string. We can fit the pattern inside of the text. So we need to look for that. I could just pass in a dot here and another one here. Yeah, a 2 is enough, I guess. So we need to check, we need to iterate over our text for as long as the length of our text is either equal to or less than the pattern. So I'm going to say pattern dot length. That's how many times do we want to iterate. Now, since we start from 0, we need to increment our loop agent or our index by 1. That's why I'm going to say I++, and that's going to iterate. That's going to increment the value for me. Now, for as long as we are inside the block of this for loop, that means that we are basically iterating over that input string. And in here, I am going to create a variable. I'm going to call it match, and I'm going to initially set it to true. Now, we need to check our pattern as well in here. So here, I'm going to create the second loop, and this loop is going to iterate over our pattern. And usually what we call this is, this loop agent, we call it J. So I'm going to say J is equal to 0. That's going to be the starting position of J. And J is going to iterate over our pattern for as many characters there are within the pattern. So we're going to say J is going to iterate for pattern dot length. And then we need to increment J as well. So we're going to say J++. Let's add the parentheses. Now, what happens inside of this block? Well, the way that we go about this is within the block of this for loop for our pattern, we check for any kind of edge cases. And what are the edge cases? Well, the edge cases are the kind of situations in which the characters do not match. So by moving those away from our for loop, what we end up with is with only the characters that do match. Now, how do we do that? Well, we're going to use, of course, an if statement, and we are going to see that we're going to grab our text and we're going to take a look at the specific position within our text by combining I plus j. If the character's position in the text is not equal to that specific position inside of our pattern, that means we have not found a match. And if we have not found a match, what is it that we want to do? Well, we want to return false. So we are going to grab the match and we're going to set it to false. That's why the match is going to have an initial value of true, because initially we are going to say, okay, it is a match, but then we cover all the edge cases in here. Now, once we find a match, we want to try to break out of this for loop as well, so we can go to our next iteration. Now, why do we break out of this? Now, you need to understand how this actually works. Let me see, we need to return Boolean from this function. So let me just complete this. So here is our nested for loop. And outside of that nested for loop, I'm going to say if match is true, then I want to return true. Otherwise, I want to return false. So here I'm going to say return false. There we go. Now, let's see what this actually means in here. So I'm going to grab my arrow. Now, this is a position of a character, and this j is also a position of a character. And how does that work? So let me give you a comment. That's the easier way of doing it. So let's say in the first position, I'm just going to give you the first one. We have I plus j, and then we check it against the pattern which has j in it. Let me just add the other one as well. Let's hit enter. I'm going to bring this down. Now, in the first iteration, I is going to be 0. So what do I mean by that? Let me get rid of the terminal for just a sec. What do I mean by that? So when I when I is 0, that means that we jump into this for loop. And that means in the first iteration, this j is going to be 0 as well, because this is what we specified here. So in the first iteration, I is 0, j is 0. Let's pass in the value of j here as well. There we go, j is 0. Now what happens next? When I say j is 0, that means here, which character do we select? What is our input string? Let's say our input string is programming languages. That's our input, and our pattern is program. So in this iteration, this is going to select for me the P character. And when we want to select any character from the text that has an index of 0, that's going to give me P as well. So let me just put that there. Now you can see both of these P's are the same. I said if they're not the same, so I said this. I said if they're not the same, then break out of this loop. If they're the same, then you do not even run this for loop, because this condition is not going to hold true. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is if any character from the pattern is not equal to a character in the text, but is this condition false? No, it's not false. It is actually true. P is equal to P. So we do not even enter the block of this if statement. We do not enter that. And then when we do not enter this if statement, we immediately move to this here and we return true from the function. And why are we returning false? The reason for this is the function returns false in only one condition. And that is when the pattern isn't found inside of our input. That means that there was no substring match for our input string. And we checked all the possible positions and there was no substring match for it. Now I'm going to make this a triple equal because these two are actually the same thing. Now, what if it's not the same thing? Then this would return false and we would come to this line. All right. Now, I need to explain why are we breaking out of this for loop? Why are we breaking out of it? Because remember, here is our nested for loop. Let me just show it to you like this. So this is our nested for loop. And for every iteration of this I, for one iteration of the I, this j is going to iterate over our pattern for as many characters as there are inside the pattern. That's how long this is going to run. even though I runs once, J is going to run for as many characters as there are. So if there are 3 characters in the pattern, as our previous example, and there are 10 characters in the input text, in the first iteration, when I is 0, J is going to run 3 times. Now, if I don't find a match, I just want to break out of that for loop. I don't want it to run those many other times. Then I check the other character if that exists within my pattern. In other words, we use this break statement inside of our inner loop to break out of our inner loop, which is the J loop, as soon as a mismatch is found. The reason for this is because continuing further, that's going to be pointless for us because there isn't going to be any match found in our pattern. So we just break out of it and we go to our next iteration of our text string. And in the next iteration, the value of I is going to be 1 and so on and so forth. All right. So this is how actually all of these methods, they work underneath. And you can see there goes, let me just get rid of this. There goes so much into these methods, like this includes. And then if you want to like take a look at the behind the scenes of it or under the hood of it, there is just a ton of information right there. So this is what I like to do with TypeScript as much as possible. I like to do it manual. But in other languages, I just go with the available method in those languages. Now, here we have our function. Let's go ahead and let's test it. I'm going to grab these scenarios. So for the first one, I want to comment these ones as well. So for the first one, we had a true. For the second one, what do we have? We have a true as well. Well, this is going to be different if we check for lowercase as well. But still, I want it to be there so I don't have to take a look at my terminal every time I'm trying to check it. This is going to be false. This is going to be true. And this was false as well. Can't be true. And this is true. Very good. Let's save everything. I'm going to copy all of that. Close this. Come right here. Paste it here. So we have the same checks. Let's go ahead and let's see if it works. Clear. And first I'm going to run tsc b tab. Let's run it. Very good. Node b tab. Let's run it. Oh, didn't I save it? Okay, I saved it now. Let's run that again. And let's run node again. And there we go. So we got true, true, false, true, false, true. Very good. So here we are done as well. Let's jump into the Python solution for this challenge. In Python, what we are going to do first is we are going to define a function and we're going to call it is substring. Come on, buddy, is underscore substring. Very good. This is going to accept a text. I could give it a type. That is going to have a type of stir, and then we can pass in a pattern here, and that could have a type of string as well. But then what this function will return is going to be a Boolean value for us. Let me just add this, and there we go. And in Python, the way the function block works is we don't have any curly braces, we just have indentation. So as soon as you do a colon and hit enter, it's going to indent it for you. Now, what do we want to do here? Well, we want to check return. What do we want to check? We want to check if our pattern exists inside of our text, and that's it. So we use the in operator. The in operator in Python, this is a built-in operator. It is going to check if one string can be found within another string, and it is going to return true or false as appropriate. And this operator, one other thing that you need to keep in mind, it is exactly like dot includes method because it is going to be case sensitive. Let's go out of there. Now for that, I am going to select all of this. Let's come into Python, put it all there. Instead of all our console logs, we're going to say print, and instead of is substring, we're going to say is underscore substring. And there we go. We no longer have these forward slashes in Python. we have the number sign or the pound sign or whatever you want to call it. Let me lowercase this, print, save everything, and there we go. Messed everything up, but anyway, let's clear this. Let's say Python C, and this, let's run it. So we said the first one is true, 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 false, true, false, true. We have true, true, false. This should be true, but then this is false and this is true. Which one is that? So that's the fourth one. The fourth one is this RAM. The reason that this is false, even though RAM exists within programming, is because this in operator is case sensitive. If you want to get rid of the case sensitivity, what you can do is you can convert all of the pattern to lowercase, and then you're going to convert your text to lowercase as well, and that's going to solve it for you. So now if I try to run this again, we get true, true, false, true, false, true. Perfect, right? So the solution for Python is done as well. The next language that I'm going to jump into is Go. So for Go, the same thing. As usual, we import our main package, which is the entry point, the entry package for our program. We are going to create a function. I'm going to call it is substring, much like before. This is going to accept a text, a pattern, and then we could type annotate these as well. We could say, okay, text has a type of string. This one has a type of string as well, but what this function is going to return is going to be Boolean. Now, we do have a method in Go as well that is going to check if a substring is a part of a string. So for that, we're going to grab our strings library. Let's import that, which I just did. And on the string library, we have this contains method. The contains method accepts your input string as well as the pattern, and it's going to check for that. What about our edge cases? Well, this is going to handle the edge case if we have our pattern as an empty string, because and that's going to return true. And the reason for that is because an empty string, as we talked about, is part of a string. But what happens if our pattern is longer than our text? Then in that scenario, this is going to return false for us because it wouldn't be able to fit that. So here we just want to return this, and that's it. Now, where is our entry function for this application? Here. Let me grab all of this. You know what? Let's grab it from JavaScript and put it here. And I'm gonna grab console logs fmt dot. I just imported that as well. We have print line, and we should be good to go. Let's run it. Go run D. Let's run that. It's going to take a few seconds in the first iteration. So we get true, true, false, 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 true. This fourth one should be true because we're not handling case sensitivity. So that's why it is set to false. Now, what if you want to handle case sensitivity as well? In that scenario, you're going to say strings.contains. And in here, what you do is you have this strings library, which we imported. And on there, we have this toLower method. And we pass in our text in there. And a second time, we're going to grab this library. We're going to grab, not contains, we're going to grab toLower. And we're going to pass in the pattern. And that's it. Now, this RAM should return true as well. So go run. There we go. So true, true, false, true, and false, true. Very good. Now after this, the final attempt of us is going to be Rust, which is going to be pretty simple as well. So let me clear the console first. And in here, I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call it is substring. This is going to accept a text. Now I am going to specify the type as a slice here, and we're going to pass in a pattern, that's going to be a type of slice. Where is the ampersand as well? But what is this function going to return? The type of that is going to be Boolean. Now in here, the only thing we need to do is we need to grab our text, and on the text we have a function or a method that is called contains. And if I just pass in the pattern, that's it. So let's grab the main entry point of our application. And in here, I am going to copy paste all of these. Let me select all of that, put it right here. Now we do have this print line, but it is a macro in Rust. That means you need to add an exclamation mark at the end of it. But after that, this name doesn't exist. So I need to get rid of that underscore lowercase s. And we should be good to go. Let's save this. Let's see. Rust C E tab. Let's run it. Contains, what is it saying? So there's a method contains a similar name. This is uppercase. Oh, sorry, that should be lowercase. Yeah, it is not uppercase. In Go it is uppercase. In Rust it is lowercase. Oh, I forgot to pass in my display specifier. Well, thank you for reminding me of that. So here I am going to open quotes, pass in my display specifier, close quotes, and pass in the comma right there. So let's save this. Very good. It's clear. Let's run this again. Very good. It compiled. And now let's just run our executable. Substring.exe, and there we go. So we get true, true, false, 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 true. For RAM, we get a false because we didn't check for any, we didn't lowercase anything. Now, if you want a lowercase, you can do that as well. Let me show it to you. So we have this lowercase text variable, and I'm going to grab my text, and on the text, we have this to lowercase method. There we go. And I could do the same thing for my pattern, lower pattern. And then instead of saying text contains pattern, I need to change this, right? I need to say lower text contains lower pattern. And now Rust C. And the reason this error happens is it says consider borrowing here. Now, here what we are actually doing is we're passing ownership to contains. Now here it is suggesting us that we need, if you want to pass in ownership, you need a type of an owned string. But here we have a string slice. So we need to pass in a reference. The way we pass in a reference in Rust for a specific variable is by passing that ampersand. And now it's going to be happy. So let's run this. Let me save this and let's run it. Okay, we didn't terminate these statements. We need to terminate them. Let's run it again, and there we go. And let's run our executable. And now we get true, true, false, true, false, true. And that's it. That's it for this challenge. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed creating it, and I enjoyed even more teaching it. See you in the next one.